Have you ever wondered what cut flower foliages might work best when selling to florists or honestly beyond? If you've ever wondered that, stick around for this video because I'm going to tell you my favorite foliages to use on my cut flower farm. Hi, if we haven't met before, I'm Ruth Ann from Abundant Blooms Flower Farm in West Michigan in Zone 6A, where I have frost-free dates from the middle of May till the middle of October. I am going into my 7th year of flower farming. I can hardly believe it. And I sell now exclusively to florists. And I farm here with my family and my 5 children who I also homeschool. And I also teach flower farmers through my online course and other educational resources how to sell flowers, especially to florists. And I am hosting a free webinar. If you're watching this live or watching this shortly after it's been published, I am hosting a free live webinar on March 13th at 12:30 Eastern Time, which is coming up very soon. So if you want to register for that, click the link in the description below and you will be registered for that. And you're not going to want to miss registering for it because those people that register and come to the webinar or get the replay will also receive a special coupon to my course, which does not go on sale very often. The webinar is called 3 Steps to Profitably Selling Flowers to Florists Without Feeling Overwhelmed. So let's all just take a deep breath. Spring's coming. We're going to sell our flowers. We're going to do it. We're going to sell them to florists. On to this video without further ado, talking about foliages on a cut flower farm. So just very briefly, why foliages? What is up with the greenery? So there is like a trend sort of, or I've seen it sometimes in flower farming, that you don't really need foliages for your bouquets. Nobody really cares about greenery. Maybe that's the case if you're selling at a roadside stand. However, I would make an argument that maybe not. But for selling to florists, greenery is an essential part of florists' backbone, their sales. They need foliage for everything, for their weddings. If you look at wedding and events, like they just have foliage just draped everywhere, all over the place. They use feet and feet and feet of foliages or foliage. They also use it in their everyday arrangements as well. And I personally think that it adds a lot as well. And I just cannot imagine a farm without having foliage. Kind of a rule of thumb is some people say to grow a third to even a half foliage on your farm. Ellen Frost from Local Color Flowers, she's a florist from Baltimore that does a lot of education and training to farmers because she only sources local flowers within 100 miles of her shop. And I've listened to a lot of her just different podcasts that I've heard her on, and she says she like half of what she buys is foliage, and she has at least one farmer that she buys from that all they grow on their whole farm is foliage. So I'm going to tell you my favorites. The list is not very long. Most of the foliage that I'm going to list here is either a perennial or a woody, which I'm sure that's shocking to all of you that know me. And over time, I have just found that perennial foliages work really, really well, and they're better. I think there's some better foliages that you can grow than some of the annual stuff. When I first started growing, I did grow some annual foliage as well, but I don't really grow any now, unless you count bupleurum, which is kind of a filler foliage. One of the great things about perennial foliage that most of the ones that I'm going to talk about, or woody foliage, is that they have a really long harvest window. So we'll get into that, but that's one benefit that I really like about most of the foliage on this list. I'm going to kind of go in order of how they appear in the season, not in order of like best to last or anything. I'm just kind of starting in the spring and moving on. So I have grown some annual foliage like basil. I actually love lemon basil. I think it smells really great. And cinnamon basil is super great color for the fall. And they're very productive and easy to grow. So if you're new and you want an annual to start with, that's what I would start with. But they are kind of fussy post-harvest and they can't go in the cooler. And so most florists do not like to use them, and I can understand why. So I do not grow them anymore, but I have grown them and a good annual foliage. The other one that I can think of that a lot of people grow is Mahogany Splendor, which is like a fall burgundy. I've never grown that. You just don't have space for everything, but I think that's also probably a pretty good annual one if you're not ready to invest into perennials or woodies. So just over time, I've just come to rely on these perennial and woody shrubs for foliage. One other crop I'm just going to talk about quickly before I get into my list is, which is kind of on my list, is eucalyptus, which I think is a great foliage flower. foliage product for a cut flower farm. It's actually what's covered here under this row cover in the center of my hoop house, because it is really not hardy to my zone. Even though I'm growing like the hardiest eucalyptus that you can buy, it's really not hardy to Michigan naturally. So I tried to overwinter it in the field and it failed, and I just didn't feel like growing it as an annual was worth it. So I am experimenting with growing it in the high tunnel. So we'll see how that works. I'm pretty sure most of them survived. So hopefully I will have eucalyptus, but otherwise that's it. I'm not going to talk about that further on my list, although I do think it's a good one, and a lot of people in other zones and regions than myself will find that to be a really good foliage. But for today, I'm just going to focus on the ones that have proven to be really good rock stars on my farm. Again, I'm in zone 6A, which is obviously going to affect this video and my list. I'm not going to be growing things that are not hardy to this list and might work really well for some of you in the south or in other regions. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Solomon seal. So Solomon seal is a perennial that comes up in the spring. It just comes bursting out of the ground in about April. It grows super quickly, and then in May, for me in Michigan, it's hardy enough to cut and sell. I actually have a whole video all about Solomon seal, so I'm not going to go into all the nitty gritty about growing it, but no, if you want more resources, you can check out that video. But florists love it. I adore it. It is like, it looks like it's hand painted, the variegated variety. It has white variegation on these green, lighter green leaves, and it is so beautiful. I just like cannot get over it. It's also relatively easy to grow, and it can be hard to get from roots, although I've heard from farmers more recently in the last year that they've been able to source it because it was pretty hard to source. When I was learning about cut flowers and people were talking about Solomon seal, and they showed pictures of it, I was like, my mom has like the entire back of her house is packed with Solomon seal. And so my sister and I dug it up one year and have transplanted it. And I also go and raid my mother's amazing Solomon seal. It just loves, I don't know, it loves her soil. It grows better at her house. So I was able to source it from my mom, but maybe you have it growing and you don't even know. So just kind of look around and you'll see it. I never knew anything about it, but it is very easy. It has a good base life, 5 to 7 days. You harvest it. I have found that harvesting it when it grows these little tiny white bellflowers that hang underneath the stem. And I wait for those to kind of fall off, and then I harvest it for the greenery. And the florists just love it in weddings, in bridal bouquets. It is so stunning. So it's really, really, really good. It prefers part shade, at least where I live. So there's a variegated variety, and then there's also a darker leafed one, which I've been told is just as good as the variegated. I just don't really have room for it, and I have a lot of the variegated, and it's just one of those things I haven't been able to add, but both are equally good from what I've heard from people like Dave Dallion, who talks about it. So once established, it does take a few years to really give you a lot of stems, but once it's established, it's really, really good. And it can put out a ton of stems from a very small space. I had like 3 feet of it when I was kind of starting to transfer it from my mom, and I think I harvested like 140 stems from like a 3 by 1.5 foot dense section of it. So it takes a few years to get like that, but it can really give you a lot of stems in a small space. So even if you only have a little bit of shade around your house or something, I think it's worth it. Okay, moving on to foliage number 2. I don't have a video on this one. I've had a lot of requests about it. I will make one, but I don't have one yet. And this is thornless raspberry and blackberries. Again, I didn't know about these until I started flower farming. I mean, I knew what raspberry blackberries were, but I didn't realize how good they were for cut flowers. And then there's thornless varieties, which are obviously great and better because then you're not dealing with the thorns, you or your end customer. So yes, it's technically 2 crops, but I'm putting them together because they're very similar and they grow very similarly, and they're both really great and maybe have a little bit different texture feel to them, but I'm kind of combining them. You can either choose one however it works for you. It's one that I don't see a lot of people talking about it. You do hear farmers talking about it, but it is such a great crop because multiple reasons. It grows all season long. So as soon as it's tall enough to cut it, which you want it to be, the taller the better, but like at least 18 to 20 inches tall, you can cut it right at the base. And you do have to prune it back every year, but you cut it right at the base and it will just keep growing. It will either keep growing the same canes, taller and taller, or it will send up new shoots all season long. I mean, like I can cut off it from June till frost. that is seriously a long time. What I usually do is harvest it or try to harvest it sporadically, kind of to give myself a constant supply of it, because I could just harvest all of it. My florists have grown to really like it. This is another one that people didn't, that some of my florists weren't as familiar with, but over time I've educated them about how wonderful it is, and most of them really, really like it. The blackberry particularly kind of has more of a, like an arching, almost vine kind of feel, and they really like it. The leaves are a little bigger. They're just slightly different, but they're both really, really great. I prefer Joan J variety for the raspberries, and I think it's the Chester for, I'll have to look it up and put it in there. I can't remember what the variety is for the blackberries, but Johnny's is now selling them. Norse Farms is where I got mine from, but Johnny's is selling them in smaller quantities, but they're from Norse. Like Johnny's is the distributor, I guess, or however you want to look at it. So they're pretty easy to get in smaller quantities. I had started with 25 of each, and I'm ordering 50 more of each variety. Like, I just cannot get enough of them. I really, really love them. They can get some damage from Japanese beetles. I've heard some people talking about that. Yes, they do get Japanese beetle damage. Actually, the raspberries more than the blackberries in my experience. But once you get through that July Japanese beetle, you know, craziness, it's better. And I haven't lost the whole crop to it. So, and you get berries. My kids go out and they're so excited. And florists, if you have berries on the crops, like immature berries, they love it. I mean, it's so texturally interesting, and they really like it. So that's just win 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 all the way around. Last year I sold every single stem I could cut. Every week I'm filling the raspberry and blackberries to be tall enough. So sometimes I cut some short for florists that were really desperate for it. I'm like, they're kind of short, and they're like, it's okay, I'll take it all. So they're just really, really, really great. Oh, technically they should be trellised. I have never trellised mine because I cut them so quickly. They've never needed to be trellised, but technically you should trellis them. But every year I'm just like, well, they're I'm just cutting them as quickly as possibly as they can grow. So, but you should trellis them if you let them grow tall enough. So next on the list is Baptisia. Again, I have a video all about Baptisia, but it is really grown for the foliage, or that's like the cash crop for me mostly. Yes, you can sell the flowers, which are lovely, but they have a very short harvest and bloom window, like 10 days maybe in June, but the foliage is great once it's mature. So I usually wait till the seed pods have started to develop, and then I start cutting it maybe late June into July, and then I can cut that all the way till frost. It doesn't seem to be affected by very many bugs. It's very drought resistant. Once it's established, it's a perennial. It will get massive, massive, massive. You only want to cut about half the plant, so you don't want to cut it all, you'll kill it, but you can cut about half of it, and it just will send up 40, 50 shoots per crown, and they just get bigger and bigger with age. I've continued to order more varieties of Baptisia. I have some more coming this spring. However, I have found that certain varieties are better for foliages. My preferred foliage that I've grown so far to maturity is called Indigo Spires. It's blue with like a yellow hint on the flowers, which is super lovely, but the foliage is huge, super tall. I mean, like 4 feet tall, and just massively branching. So from one cut, I usually cut it down into more than one stem. And it is tricky to harvest. Check out that Baptisia video. There are a few tricks and tips to it to get it to hydrate. It is a really, really, really good crop. But like I said, it's the Indigo Spires that I have personally found to be the best foliage. I also grow one called American Goldfinch, which is a yellow spike, which I started. Both of those are my oldest Baptisias. They're both about, I think they're going into their 4th year. And the plants are just super great and robust. But the foliage for the American Goldfinch really does not, I don't know, it doesn't hydrate as well. It just seems to shrivel up, and it does not last as long as the Indigo Spire. So tell me if you know any tricks or tips, or if you have another variety of Baptisia that the foliage is really great for. Yeah, I definitely found the Indigo Spire superior to the American Goldfinch. So just something to keep in mind. I have multiple other varieties growing. I have like a lemonade and a vanilla cream, and those are not established enough for me to be able to make judgments on them. We'll see, but the Indigo Spires definitely is better in my experience. The next one on my list, I know you're all going to be shocked if you know me, is Ninebark. I love Ninebark. I love woody shrubs. I think they add a level of depth to your farm that you don't get with just annuals or perennials, in my opinion. And they kind of set you apart from other flower farmers. At least here in West Michigan, there's hundreds of flower farmers, no exaggeration. And they've set you up for the long game. Jenny Love always talks about that woody shrubs are her retirement plan. And I keep telling my husband that when I buy more, like, oh, it's just a retirement plan. It's fine. I have, I think, 6 varieties of Ninebark at this point. I really like all of them. They come in a smaller leaf and a bigger leaf. They come smaller and taller and bigger, and there's just a bunch of different varieties. So I really love Ninebark. They, for me, are not very susceptible to Japanese beetles, although I know for some people that is the case. And I do not have issues with powdery mildew here in Michigan. Again, I know other places have real issues with powdery mildew, and I think in the South, people, where it's humid, farmers have a really hard time growing them. So just be aware of that, but it works really, really, really well for me on my farm. I sell tons of it. I have had a few issues with it, like getting dry on the leaves. And so there have been a few things that I'm trying to figure out, but it really is a really great crop, and it attracts a lot of praying mantises and other beneficial insects for some reason. Maybe it's not that, but they're all over mine and they lay their eggs there. So it's been really fun. I do have a video all about Ninebark, and it's also Ninebark and Smokebush, which is the next one on our list. Number 5 is Smokebush. I think if I had to choose one, I don't know, maybe I can't choose one, but Smokebush is top of my list. I just think Smokebush is such an amazing plant. It grows super tall. I sell it in 2 different lengths. I sell a tall and a shorter one. It sells for a good price. It is not very susceptible to diseases. I've had a few issues with some Ninebark. I haven't had that with my Smokebush. It does not get pressure from Japanese beetles. It's just beautiful, like the shape of the leaf, how some of my designers use it in their designs. It's just phenomenally incredible and beautiful. That dark maroon in the fall, and then it comes in a chartreusey green as well, which I don't have mature yet, but I do have it growing. I think I have 3 varieties of Smokebush growing now. My most recent variety is one that I got from Farmer Bailey that gets smoke on first year wood, which I'm super excited about. It's not mature yet, but I might be able to cut off it this season. But that's really exciting because a lot of people do want the smoke, which is like the plume on it, but it often comes on second year wood, which just means you have to wait 2 years to get it, and you can't sell the smoke plumes for twice as much as the like just the foliage greenery. So it's not really worth it to save, because you would lose money. And if you can, I mean, if you can't sell it, it's great, save it. But I'm selling every Smokebush. I'm selling out of Smokebush. So I'm really excited to have a larger amount of Smokebush that I can cut off of. So hopefully this year I will have more, because I planted more in 2024 and then in 2025 also. I'm trying to remember exactly, but I've planted more. So, but I have several that are from 2022. So they're very established and they're just rock stars. I really love them. Okay, so you can check out the video that I have all about Smokebush if you're interested in varieties and planting and how I harvest it and all that kind of stuff. So check out the video for more details. Also, I really think that a lot of these things would be really great if you're a home gardener. I know there's a bunch of home gardeners that watch this. Don't think that you're not included in this. Add a couple of Smokebush into your landscaping for your cut flower purposes. It adds diversity, like I said. It attracts beneficial insects like praying mantises, and then add in some raspberry and blackberries. The foliage is really beautiful. You get to eat the berries in addition, and just have a couple of them, and then you can add them to your bouquets. They last 2 weeks in a vase, and like you don't need to do anything special to them. They're really, really great. And then another note to some home gardeners, I've recently sold several of my 10 by 10 cutting garden guides, and I just want to say they're $10, and I just want to say thank you for the people that do that, that watch this and do that to support the channel. And I actually was looking at that guide recently, and I was like, wow, this is really a really helpful guide. So if you want to know how to start a cutting garden, you can check that out too. And just know that anything that you do like that, sharing the videos helps support my channel, and it really does help me in growing this channel and reaching more farmers and gardeners even alike. So I just want to say that I really appreciate that. So just to sum it up, florists use a lot of foliage. They need foliage for their sales. It has been my experience that I sell a significant amount of foliage. Wedding and event florists need it. Everyday florists need it, for everyday, deliveries and that kind of stuff. So foliage is definitely an important part of my farm's crop plan. So 2 that I would just add as like honorable mentions would be mountain mint and lamb's ear. They both can be really good, and I just kind of let them kind of go wild, and I do cut off of them a lot as well. So those are kind of some runner-ups. Beyond that, if you want to learn more about selling flowers to florists, don't forget to sign up for the webinar on March 13th, which is coming up this week. If you're watching this shortly after it came out, 12:30 Eastern Time, 3 steps to profitably sell flowers to florists without feeling overwhelmed. I can't wait to be there. This is the first webinar I've ever hosted, and don't forget that you'll get a coupon to my course if you sign up for the webinar. The link is in the description below. And I'd love to hear from you. What are some favorite foliages of yours? Because some of you might be in a different region than me and be able to share with other people what is working really well for you. And I'm definitely always up for learning about a new foliage as well. And if you've enjoyed this video, I recommend that you check out this other video I did about how much I made in my first year of selling flowers to florists. It might surprise you, but I started very small, and I know that's where a lot of you are at. And so I just want to encourage you if you're at that point in the journey. So check out that video here, and I will see you next time or in the webinar on Friday the 13th at 12:30.